So now I'm going to go ahead and start on damage. So select your damage layer. You're still going to want white, small brush, and jitter, but turn off the fade out. Now, the damage takes a bit more thought because it's a lot more visible than the scratches and such, so you're going to want to try to keep it to areas of the weapon that it would make sense to get damage on. Like for example the handle, you can add some here on the handle. Damage can make a weapon look a lot better and a lot more realistic, but if you go overboard or if you don't do it well, then it can make the weapon look that much worse instead of that much better. So just be careful with it. Try to put some serious thought into where you put the damage. And remember that it will be somewhat faded out in game. It never looks quite as nice and obvious as it does in GIMP. So pretty much anywhere that looks like you could easily get some scratches. Pretty much all your damage is going to be along some kind of edge, because that's where things get beat up the most. Edges and corners. You might need your overlay back on. You're going to want to be careful on pieces like this foregrip not to put any damage along this edge, because that's going to need to blend fairly smoothly with this edge right here. So putting damage there just doesn't quite make sense, because it's supposed to be a smooth surface, not an actual edge. So just put it on like the front and back here. Little bits of damage on this ledge right here. Not too much though. Want your gun to look like it's in pristine condition, then or almost pristine condition, then I would recommend just skipping this step, or just doing very, very little. The scratches and the blotches and such, I would still go ahead and do, just because every weapon has some minor imperfections, machining marks and scratches and various things like that. You can pretty much do as much or as little as this as you want. If you want it to look like your weapon has really been through it, then you're going to want to do a lot of this. If your weapon is supposed to look relatively new, then you want very little or none. The one area that I recommend doing a pretty significant amount is on the magazine, because and specifically the top of the magazine, simply because the magazine gets slid in and out of a metal slot on the weapon on a regular basis, so it makes sense to have scratches. Unless, of course, you're doing a weapon that has like a polymer magazine or something of that kind. In which case I'd still do some, but it's a lot easier to do if you have something that's horizontal, because moving this direction, at least in my opinion, is a lot easier than moving vertically. But, oh well. All around magazines get thrown around and generally mistreated a lot more than the gun itself, so another reason to do a lot more damage on the magazine. Okay, so that should really about do it for drawing in damage. Like I said before, you can do more or less of that, depending on what you want your gun to look like. So now I'm going to go and turn off my overlay, and then just do sort of one final run through of everything and make sure that it looks okay. On the details layer, I think these still look a little too bright, so I'm going to erase over them again. And also, to make them look a little bit worn, I'm just going to erase sort of little nicks into them, because this is basically just paint. Paint tends to wear off over time, so this is another thing that you may or may not want to do depending on how new your weapon's supposed to look. Okay, and then the shading, I'm going to go ahead and choose the largest brush I can and change the opacity to about 20, and I'm just going to add slightly, okay, that's not working. I'm going to slightly lighten the upper parts of the gun. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to. Just to give it a sort of somewhat uniform difference. Alright, and then I'm going to slightly darken the lower parts. Nothing major, just fairly subtle change. Okay, and these top two layers, if you want to, you can do them. Basically just pick some kind of dark brown and then a lighter brown. And go around areas where you added damage and just add a little bit of brown in them to make it look like you've got, you know, some dirt built up in your scratches and such. Again, this just depends on how new or how used you want your gun to look. The lighter brown, I'm just going to go around and add in all these pieces of damage. The darker color, I'm going to use a bigger brush and just, like in this edge right here, I'm going to slightly sort of tint it darker brown, because dirt could build up there. That would be a good place to get, easy place to get the gun dirty. In most cases, I wouldn't recommend doing much, if any, of this, because I mean, unless a gun is just really badly taken care of, you don't get much dirt in it. But I'm going to do a little bit for this tutorial. You can also add the dirt here, like in these creases in the handle, just sort of make sections of brown area. That's a place where you actually could get some dirt or grime fairly easily. Alright, and then save, and that is about it for the texture.